I said, I'm closing the company, but I want to keep all of you people, and I will guarantee full salary, same bonus as last year, full health care, but your role is to find the bride.
He recognized me right away, and I was very shocked by that because I thought, how does he know what I look like? I never sent the shotgun pictures or anything like that. And I asked him, and he's like, oh yeah, I looked you up. So I felt very violated.
I started to get 3, 4, 5 dates a day. I peaked out at 10.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you do 10 dates in a day? If you take a poll among married people and you ask them, is your spouse the person you envisioned that you would marry? I would imagine a lot of people would say, no, not necessarily. My image of the ideal spouse was just so vastly different from the person I ended up marrying.
I can just tell you that I am so in love with this lady. I'm crazy about her. Your wife has to be number one. I saw so many problems with kids that come along and destroy marriages.
It's such a modern way of doing things now, which I don't love, is people dating multiple people at once.
We don't admit it consciously, but we still want to be taken care of. And I think also men subconsciously
Want to take care.
And we have to let that happen.
Wow, this is a guy who knew what he wanted and put all of his resources into finding what he wants. That spoke to me on a personal level because so many of us, maybe we know what we want, but we don't really employ the resources that are needed to get to that goal. Mm-hmm. You did that. Welcome back. It is a new year on From the Inside Out. We're so excited to be here and to continue in this amazing journey here on the podcast. I'm Ida Schottenstein.
I'm Rivkah Eda.
And From the Inside Out has always been and continues to be all about turning inspiration into action. And we do that through our honest conversations with some incredible guests. And we explore things like relationships, personal transformation, and we always look at how our inner world shapes us in real life and shapes what we do and how we show up in the world.
And what's unique about this podcast is that we don't just stay on the surface. We also bring the deeper inner dimension, the Hasidic and Torah perspective, uncovering the soul layer beneath our choices, relationships, and life journeys.
We always begin our episode with a clear intention. We want to know what we want to walk away with. And we stay open throughout the episode to where the conversation will flow so that we can walk away with new insight and courage and practical steps to move forward in our lives.
I think that's always the challenging part before the episode. I'm always nervous that the conversation should flow and be open and be very genuine. And you never know what's going to come up. But Hashem has always guided us and helped us with the right words. So far, so good.
Yeah, and I think it's just a parallel to life is that you have to be prepared for what comes, but you also have to be open to things not always going as planned. And I think our conversations on the podcast are a reflection of that. We always come very prepared, but open to the conversation moving in a different direction.
Which it does many times.
Yes.
And often it stays within.
Some of those have been really
incredible.
Yeah, like that one with Rabbi Sachs.
Yes.
That question that you asked him that was not on the script.
Yeah, it wasn't on the script. Yeah. And Rabbi Sachs is very English. I was a little bit hesitant, but I was like, I got to get this question in. It was why do bad things happen to good people? So if you want to hear the answer, go back to the Rabbi Sachs episode. And may his neshama have a great aliyah. It's one of our great highlights and a big zchut to have interviewed him. As we step into 2026, our blessing for you is to have the clarity to know what's truly in your hands and the courage to release what isn't. And we'll keep asking real questions and stay open to where each conversation needs to go. And thank you for walking into this year with us. We're so grateful for all the feedback, and we pray that this podcast continues to grow and blossom, and that the feedback is that you have learned so much like we do.
Yeah, today's conversation felt like the perfect way to begin a new year.
Because this is an inspiring episode about a couple who made choices from a very genuine, wise place. And they're wise people. And we're joined by Ira Ziff, the president of Precision Research Group, and Robyn Barsky, executive recruiter and career coach. And together, they bring decades of experience helping people navigate pivotal decisions in both career and life. And they're really an incredible couple.
And what made this episode especially impactful for us was not just what they do, but it was their story.
It's actually layered and honest and filled with insight about timing, persistence, and making choices from the right place. And we learn so much from this conversation, and we think you'll find yourself reflecting on how these themes show up in your own life.
Yeah, and we'll let Ira and Robyn share their story. We'll let them share it themselves.
Because trust us, you're going to want to hear it. It's very unique. And before we begin, I think often the things that we share, a shout out or a sponsor, very much relate to the episode. And I want to give a shout out to my sister Hannah Herzog from Encino, California, who just released a beautiful children's book. I'm really proud of her because she really wanted to do this and she made it happen. And it's called My Inner Spark, and the link will be in the podcast notes. And it's about discovering your inner spark. It's about a little girl who is on a journey to find her inner spark. And I think that when we can guide our children and help them connect to that spark early on and make healthy choices from that place, we're setting the stage for a very bright future ahead. So
yeah, I think children's books are such a great way to impart values.
You wrote one
to children.
too.
I did.
Yes.
For the same reason, to just inspire younger people through stories to believe in themselves.
Right, and it's never too late. If you didn't read those books or have that message instilled within you at an early stage, you can do it at any stage, but it does help to impart this on our children. And so go to the link in my podcast notes and order my sister's book. Love you, Hannah, so proud of you. And before we begin, I also want to share with you that we had an amazing sponsor in the last few episodes, Kosher Travelers. And I feel like this is a hug from Hashem because I've been cooking away the last few Pesachs. But this year I'm invited to be the matchmaker at the program in Rhodes, Greece. And I wanted to share with you that there are still some rooms left. If you want to join me on this program and mention my name, you'll get 2 extra nights free. So you can be there for 12 nights and you won't have to pay for 2 of them.
I think that's great that they have a matchmaker join them on the Pesach program.
Yeah, I thought that was a good decision.
So many families there together. What a great opportunity to
get to know people.
Yeah,
yes.
well, and their families. And may you make many shidduchim.
Amen, amen. I'll be working at it. On that note, we're going to actually hear about a matchmaking experience within this episode, how this amazing couple met. So let's dive in.
Yep, enjoy.
Welcome, Robyn and Ira. It is such a pleasure to have you here. I wanted to share with everybody the reason I have brought Robyn and Ira here today and how I met them. As a matchmaker, I like connecting with many different people. And actually, it started with Diane Abrams, who's a member of your shul in New York, KJ Synagogue. She introduced me to a lovely gentleman,
Rick Lobel, who knows many people in the KJ Synagogue. And we went on a walk together. And he shared with me a story about Robyn the bride. And I actually would love you both to share the story. And when I heard this story, I said, I must meet this couple. And I wanted my husband to come along with and hear your story. So I would love for you to start off in this episode by sharing your story, because I think it's really a very important story for all of us to hear. It's really life lessons for singles, for adults, for marriages, for life. So who are we going to start with? Well, Ira really
yes.
starts the story.
So I was married. I have 4 children. And all of a sudden, my marriage ended. And I was alone. I had we shared full custody with children. And 6 years went by, and I said, that's it. I need to get married. So, as Robyn says, I was a bit pathetic and just needed to get it going. So, how do you do it? So, I have an executive search firm, and I'm a one-trick pony. I have to do one thing very well, but I can't do multiple things. So, I had a meeting with my number 2 person in my company, who is a non-Jewish woman who was raised in Idaho on a farm, never met a Jew before. And I sat down with her and I said, I'm closing the company, but I want to keep all of you people. And I will guarantee full salary, same bonus as last year, full health care, but your role is to find the bride. And the reason why we called it The Bride is that we named every search something, as the CEO of this company or whatever it was. And we sat down at a coffee shop and the back of an envelope. I said, okay, Dawn, her name was Dawn, we need a target. So I wrote down, there's 6 million Jews in America at the time. I said, let's assume half of them are female. And it just so happens that I read a statistic that 6% were Orthodox. So out of 180,000 women, let's say 1 out of 1,000 is our target. That's between X and Y age. And so our goal is to interview and for me to date as many of the 180 women as possible. So then I said, how are we going to find them? So the easiest thing would be to go on JDate at the time, and there were a few other boutique kind of and that's too passive for me because as a recruiter, I just don't place ads. I have to find the people. I go after them because the people who respond to ads are probably not the people who I want. And I want the very best available talent. So this story is about my most successful search. Out of 30 years in the business, this is it. So what we did was my team and I, we identified every shul on the East Coast, Midwest, the West Coast, and some of Canada. And we try to reach the rabbi to the rebbitzin to find the shadchanim. Because in those days, matchmakers, or as my staff called them, shotguns. They had no way of pronouncing these things. And so you couldn't just do a search like you can today for matchmakers. We had to create our own proprietary list. So we came up with around 220 or so matchmakers. We did phone, mail, phone. We just started to reach out to them. They wanted my material, so we sent them. We followed up, and we used the same software for recruiting as we did for the search. And it had a tickler system in there so that there was shadchanim on the West Coast that only wanted to talk at 9 o'clock their time on Sunday nights. So it was a full-time job reaching out to these people.
Yeah, I know all about it. How many people did you have working on this?
There was 3. Yeah, the full-time job. And they were all busy. And anytime we made a connection with a shadchan, or they would send me on a date, we would send them a gift.
And this is the gift
Oh,
we brought for you.
So,
Each of you.
nice.
in any event, I bought
Obviously, there was still some left over, so I don't know.
bought hundreds and hundreds of these gifts because
for you.
one of the things that you needed to be is the ultimate mensch. I did not want to have any competition from any other guy out there. Anytime,
So if you went on a date, someone got this
Everybody-
suggestion.
Not the person who he dated. It was the shotgun. The matchmaker got a gift sent to her.
That's so thoughtful.
so in any event,
I mean, who does that, right?
It's amazing.
Wow.
Cute little soap.
so I literally bought 300 of those.
This is
It's actually 21 years old.
We kept them just for this purpose.
What is it?
It's a soap.
So
oh, it's a soap.
Yeah.
How nice.
Yeah.
in any event,
Some self-care.
Right, exactly.
Beautiful.
so what happened was I started to get names of people. And the first date I went on, it was a total disaster. The lady flew in. She was an executive in Chicago, and she flew in to meet me. And let's just say that the picture wasn't it wasn't representative of the person. And it just didn't go well. The second date was also a disaster, and it was with the bride.
It was with Robyn the bride.
Yes. So that did not go well. I'll let her tell why. We were both rather disappointed. To be politically correct, it was a disaster. And we were revolted by each other. We told the shotgun, no more. So I went on my happy way, and I went and started to interview women. So here are the statistics. In 3 months, I interviewed 120 women on the phone, and I kept getting the same names after a while. And so I would drive from where I lived in Providence, Rhode Island. I would drive to New York, and I'd have 1 or 2 dates, and it was terrible. And I said, that's never going to happen again because it's just too much effort. So I started to get 3, 4, 5 dates a day. I peaked out at 10.
Wow.
Yeah, it was.
How did you do 10 dates in a day?
Well, my staff helped coordinate it because I have no sense of direction, and I didn't know New York, New Jersey, and tunnels and this and that. So, it was like I would just say to them, I'm just coming how about a quick cup of coffee? I'm coming down to give food and money to my son who's at YU. Why don't we just grab a quick cup of coffee? So I made the mistake of having the same meeting in the same place once.
Oh, gosh.
But in any event.
And 2 women showed up.
Right. So what happened was this was going on, and I'm having all these dates, and I'm going out of my mind. So I thought, well, maybe I should get a therapist. So I found this PhD psychologist who was quite wonderful, and I said, you're going to be my dating coach. And my staff would print out the printout of everybody who I was seeing, and we went through each, twice a week. We went through the list, and she helped get me straight.
We should get back to Robyn.
Oh, okay.
And you finished the statistics. How many people did you end up dating?
So I interviewed 120. I dated 35 women, anywhere from 1 to 4 or multiple times. And we did a heat map as to, you know what a heat map is?
No.
Well, imagine a map with pins on it. So we just did electronically. So we did a heat map of everyone who I interviewed. So we're with 120 women around the country. And I said, oh my gosh, I only have 1 date in Teaneck, New Jersey, which is like flooded with Jews. And I said, there's something wrong. And our shotgun, Leah, was in Teaneck. So I called Leah and I said, Leah, it's been a while, been a few months. Who do you know? And she said, well, I don't feel comfortable giving you other names unless you're done with Robyn. And I was done. But I thought, what if I say it's okay and I put her into a lousy spot and it doesn't go well? She'll think, wow, what a mensch. He gave it a try. I'm open up the floodgates. And that's exactly what I wanted. So I put a call out to Robyn, and what happened?
Well, I was actually in Kennedy Airport.
I want to hear about that first date that you guys went on.
Okay.
Why did that pan out as a disaster? Well, why was that a disaster? And then I want to hear about the second one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why was
Tell us about the first date.
Why was it a disaster?
For me? Okay, so I was coming from work, and we met in the lobby of a hotel. And so I was like in power mode. And he was already waiting for me there. And first of all, now this was 22 years ago, okay? And he recognized me right away, and I was very shocked by that because I thought, how does he know what I look like? I never sent the shotgun pictures or anything like that. And I asked him, and he's like, oh, yeah, I looked you up. So I felt very
My staff did.
violated.
My staff did
You
a
know.
whole dossier on everybody.
I felt a little violated, in the beginning. And anyway, we sat down and he starts showing me pictures of his kids and his house and everything. It was just like so overwhelming right at the first conversation.
Yeah.
And I was just put off by a lot of that. I mean, we had a pleasant conversation, but we were just talking about different things. We were not really on the same page, I felt. And that's why I thought, this guy's not for me. We just came from different worlds. He had a family. He grew up in a different place. I was in New York. We just had...
And you had never been married.
And I'd never been married. And I just didn't have a frame of reference. Like the first thing I didn't want to be speaking about was your children. Because it's one thing if I had children, then we could share, things. But I didn't have that. So I didn't have a frame of reference for that kind of lifestyle from which he came. And so that's why I just thought, this is not going to work.
But then you went on a second date.
Right. So, but maybe you can say why I was a disaster to you.
Well, once I identified her, she just kind of shut down, and she was impenetrable. I mean, it was just so awkward talking with her. So, what do I know about dating? It was my second date. I married someone who I knew in high school, and I didn't date. Any event. So Leah puts me in touch with her, and we have a second meeting. And she was normal.
You mean the second time round?
The second
Right,
date.
the second
3 months
date.
later after the first date.
Oh, okay.
she
You went
was-
on one. This is the second. Yeah.
She was normal. And then I talked to my psychologist, and I thought, let's keep her in the lineup. So each week for 4 weeks, I put her in the lineup. And
you would go out with other people in between. Yeah.
many, many people.
Right.
So now...
Wait, I just want to say something. On that second date, we met in New Haven, Connecticut. He was coming from Providence, and I was coming from New York. So I said, I'll meet you halfway. And we finish where I turned to go back, to New York, and he calls me, and he says, I just want you to know I'm behind you. And I said, why? And he says, I'm going to New York to, visit my son, at YU. But meanwhile, he was going to New York. That was a Saturday night. He was going to New York to spend Sunday dating 10 people.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I didn't know any of this.
Okay, so I decided to keep her in the lineup for 4 weeks. Now I'm sweating. Now there's just a lot of pressure. I've never had this kind of pressure in my whole life. I've got 7 women who are making it very clear that it's enough already. Where's this relationship going? They were very interested. And she's the only one that's not showing me buy signs. And I'm thinking that she's the one. So I meet with her in Central Park, and it's starting to drizzle. And I said, oh my gosh, I've got to get this out. Feeling very awkward. So I tell her, I'm very transparent. I tell her what's going on. I have this whole enterprise going, and I think you're the one. And
you told her this on the second date?
No, this is like the
Much
fifth,
later.
like the fifth
Okay.
date. And your response?
I laughed because then he started to open up the kimono and he explained to me what was going on. And I said, I just thought it was so hilarious. And I just said, well, no, I'm not ready to get married tomorrow. And then he said, well, I don't want to wait 3 years to get married either. And so he put me on the spot, basically.
Yeah.
And I said, well, maybe we can find something in the middle. Why don't we just date exclusively for a while and see where that goes? And that was the compromise that we came up with. And then,
So what happened was I didn't close the deal. So I'm going out of my mind. So it's starting to rain, and I'm at around 80th Street, and I walk down to 14th Street in the rain and walk back. And in the meantime, I'm calling all the shadchanim and all the women, and I'm closing down the whole situation. And then that night,
You must have really liked her already and had...
Oh, yeah, I thought she was the one, but I had dates the next day.
Right.
So I went to a hotel because I always stayed over because it was just too much to drive back. And there was an Aish convention there. And I meet some rabbis that I knew. And they said, oh, I got to introduce you to Shadchanim. I said, no more. So I knew that Robyn was doing some kind of off-site seminar, a conference at a hotel in Westchester, New York. So I got up at 5:30 in the morning because I wanted to go to New York back to New York I was in Connecticut. I had to go back to New York to daven and do my dates. So I went to the conference before she arrived, left her a gift, and then I couldn't cancel the dates. It wasn't appropriate, last minute. So I went, and then I just kept going after her and did whatever I could to make sure we got married.
So what was it that shifted for you about Robyn?
Well, the more I spoke to her, the more I understood how she was a giver. And it wasn't how she looked, and it wasn't what she wore. And it was more about who she was as a person. And she redefines a giver. And I heard about how she was interacting with her friends. It was never about her. And I had very little understanding of what she did professionally. She's very modest. And how she was, really there for her mother in a very meaningful way. So all these things really added up to something very special.
It's pretty interesting because if you take a poll among married people and you ask them, is your spouse the person you envisioned that you would marry? I would imagine a lot of people would say, no, not necessarily. I thought I would, my image of the ideal spouse was just so vastly different from the person I ended up marrying. So when we're looking back, it's kind of easier to kind of see the big picture and say, okay, well, it makes sense to be open-minded and maybe approach something that is not necessarily, what I thought I would want. I'm just wondering, if you were to speak to someone, right, moving forward, someone who's in the dating world right now, and they tell you, well, I know what I want. I'm certain I have an idea of what I want my spouse to be like, but they're still single. What would you say to them?
So my answer is, let's see your list. Let's hear the list, because everybody has a list of what I think I want. And there are some people, friends of mine, who I do still advise, and they bounce things off of me in this way. And I'll just challenge them on the list and say, well, wait a minute, why is that on your list? Why is that so important? And I find that particularly older people have still things on the list that aren't important. Maybe we were socialized into thinking they were important, but they're really not important. And now I can look back and I can say, listen, let me tell you something. I wasn't attracted to Ira at the beginning. I was really put off by all this baggage, so to speak, that he had, whatever. And I never would have looked at someone like him, but I trusted the matchmaker. And then I also was open, and I spoke to other friends of mine who had gotten married also later in the life, and I got their advice. And they told me the same thing. Listen, you have to, let's check him out, whatever, but you have to really just be open, because sometimes those things that we think are very material are totally insignificant in a relationship. And so I think that's really how people have to look at these things. My list was quite short. And people would ask me, well, what are you looking for? And I would say, you know what? I'm just looking for a mensch, and the rest is commentary. And that's what shifted in my mind for Ira, because as I went out with him more and I got to know him a little bit more, I saw what a mensch he was. And I saw how he treated people in restaurants. I saw also when I finally introduced him to my mother, and I saw how he treated her. And then I saw how just different types of situations. And then we had a very tragic thing happen in our family. And I didn't tell Ira because, I was kind of private. And there was still a lot that, we didn't share with each other. It was quite early on. And we also weren't living in the same place. So it's not like I saw him every week or every day. And, we had very different lives. And something very tragic happened in our family. And I didn't return his calls for a couple of days. And then he got worried. And finally, I picked up the phone and I told him what happened. And he was just like, okay, I'm coming right now. I'm leaving right now. And I'm going to be with you. And I said, don't worry, it's okay. I'll be okay. But the fact that he just was ready to jump in his car, drive down to New York, and just be there for myself and my mother, that was a big shift for me. When I thought, wow, this guy, like, really, he has my back, and he just drops everything in a crisis. So and you have to be open to seeing those signals.
Yeah. But what would you say to somebody who said, I see all those great qualities in the person I'm dating, but I want to feel attracted to them?
Mm-hmm. I say attraction comes. Now, it doesn't mean you have to go and get married and then wait for that. Okay. I mean, eventually I had the attraction after, I got to know him, and I blocked out like all these other things that I originally thought were just incompatible. Right. And we really, on paper, are incompatible. We just come from very different places. But we shared the same value system. Our direction moving forward was the same. We wanted the same things in life. We had the same values about Judaism, about Israel, about, work ethic, things like that. And that was our common ground. And that's what made me attracted. So it wasn't necessarily like the physical part. It was, when you get to know the person, then the attraction comes. It's like, oh my God, I want to spend all my time with him. He's like the greatest. That's what I tell people. You have to look at other things and see if those things resonate with you, because that's the stuff that's going to matter in 20, 30 years, when the hair falls out and, all these other things happen. You have to have a foundation to stand on in the relationship.
And you had said that if Robyn was in a lineup of women, you would never have chosen her.
You remember that?
I remember that because I tell this to guys all the time.
Totally. And I also tell guys who are looking, and it just goes over their head. I mean, I don't know how you break through on that. And
well, how did you break through?
Well, I had a lot of options. I had a lot, that's a whole other subject about
guys having a lot of options.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's, and it creates problems for women, and it also creates problems for guys because they can't make a decision. But I wanted to make a decision, and I think it helped having a therapist really go through what I was looking for, and what it really meant to be in a marriage. And I can just tell you that I am so in love with this lady. I'm crazy about her.
So it was a shift in your perspective. Maybe it was the fact that you really wanted it. Maybe some people think they want it, but maybe they don't, not really wanting.
People are scared.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very scary decision, especially those of us who are getting remarried, because the percentage, the retention rate, as a recruiter, I'll tell you, the retention rate's lousy for a remarriage. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah. And they may think, okay, someone listening to this may think, oh, it's all very well, I have to get to know the person and then I'll become attractive. I know I can be one of those people that can have both simultaneously.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you can. Sometimes the fireworks are there right away. But if they're not, it doesn't mean that that's a reason to step away from the situation. And I always tell people, you've got to give somebody at least 3 dates. first, you can't, unless the person repulses you on the first date, if you're, moderately interested or you're not sure, whatever, go out again. Give it another try. Something else will reveal itself that will send you in whichever direction. But the first date, usually, you can't tell.
Right.
It's too hard. It's very awkward, and, people that don't know what to say, what not to say, whatever. And so you got to give it another try.
So one thing that stood out to me when Rivkah shared your story is, wow, this is a guy who knew what he wanted and put all of his resources into finding what he wants. And that spoke to me on a personal level, because so many of us, maybe we know what we want, but we don't really employ the resources that are needed to get to that goal. You did that, and I think that's great. I would imagine that you see a lot of people who don't do it. So what would you say to someone who maybe they know what they want, but and they might not have all the resources like you had available to them? How would you advise them to navigate, let's just say, finding their soulmate?
It's so difficult nowadays, going on the apps. Many people get married and they're very successful at it, but it's tough out there. And I think that if you're really serious, you need a coach, because emotions take you away from your goal. And you've got to be really focused on the end goal. And I'm not sure how to answer your question, because the way I did it was I just went into action.
Right.
And
well, I guess your answer is get a coach. Like, that's what really helped you ultimately. But I find it interesting that 22 years ago, because it's such a modern way of doing things now, which I don't love, is people dating multiple people at once. I didn't realize that was happening 22 years ago. Or was it just you?
Well, look,
like,
it's
would
not,
you advise someone to do that?
It's not emotionally healthy.
Yeah.
It's, but I was on a mission, and I closed my company to do this. So it cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars of investment of people and lost income. And I just couldn't do it forever. So
would you advise someone to do that, what you did?
If they could do it, yeah, do it in an instant. In fact, many people approached me about how I found the bride. And by the way, everyone in New York calls her the bride.
Yeah, Robyn the bride.
So, any event, I got so many inquiries, and no one did anything about it, except out of the blue, I get a call from this hedge fund guy who heard about it. He was in Chicago, and he said, I want you to work with my chief of staff, and I'd love for you to help educate me on how to do it. So I gave him the entire list. I told him all the protocols. I told him, find gifts. In fact, the whole gift thing, I had a whole room dedicated to gift wrapping. And we had a whole operation. So yeah, there was one person who deployed it.
Well,
I don't know how he did.
That's why I wanted to meet you, but yeah.
So would you have done anything differently now looking back at the process?
No, I loved the way I did it. I loved it. It was so perfect.
Listen, I think that what he did was a little out there,
Right.
like out of the box for most people, because many people were inspired by our story and our wedding, and they came up to us, how did you do this? Because it was so unlikely that the two of us would meet. And I think, so this type of process, it's not for everyone at all. And as Ira said, getting a mentor, getting a coach is very important. And I would also particularly sort of stay off a lot of those crazy apps, because the apps, swiping left and right and all of this, they facilitate this just swirling around in the fishbowl, so to speak. And it's only focused really on looks, right? So I find that the process is much more effective if you're working with a matchmaker or friends or some mentors or coaches or something who can work with you and really get to know you and help you find the right people. So it may not be, 120 matchmakers or 200 or whatever it was. And by the way, many of them were still calling us after we got married, because
Calling
they
you.
still had him in their system.
Oh, and they would make suggestions.
And they would call with suggestions. So, but
Married.
I think if somebody is they have to be serious and motivated, and we need help. However you want to define it, we can't do these things on our own, particularly as we get older, because we're carrying too much meditated things in our minds, and we need help to cut through that. And also, I think as people get older, they get, and Ira mentioned this, is there's a little more fear that settles in. Fear of rejection, fear of never getting married, fear of being too old to have children, all these things. And that blocks people from movement. So, and the men too, they also fear getting rejected, right? So people are reluctant to be as open as maybe they should be, like I was. I mean, I admit it, in the beginning, to just be a little vulnerable, be a little open, transparency, and also to be more focused on like, okay, this is a very big decision. I have to take this very seriously.
So challenging. I would say specifically in the ultra-Orthodox world where people are going into the dating space and you're meeting someone who's potentially going to be your life partner.
Right.
And you're meeting them for the first time. And you have to, there's like this pressure to make these decisions while you also want to get to know the person. But there is a period of time where, Rivkah, you could probably speak to this better than I can, but at a certain point, it's like, okay, you should know. But then this person doesn't know yet. And it's like, how do you balance getting to know the person on such a deep level with the fact that they are a new person, and you don't want to just completely put everything out there, but you want to be vulnerable? Like, I imagine it's a very difficult.
It is. Well, like every big decision in life, it's a balance,
Right.
and there's always uncertainty because we don't know. What I did actually was I engaged some friends of mine who had also gotten married later in life, two men who were married previously, like kind of a similar framework. And I got their advice on how did they cross over the line and when did they know and this and that. And that's what helped me focus on what was.
That's one of the best things you can do.
Yeah. What was
ask
important.
someone objective or someone who's been in your situation.
Exactly. And, we have to seek advice from the right people. My mother also, I never really spoke to her about my dating life or whatever, but I felt like this was important enough to share it with her. She was a very wise lady, and she had already met him, so she just had all these. And she said to me, Ira's treating you like your father treated me when we were dating, and we had a beautiful marriage. And she said, be open to it. Just because, you're a big professional and you can do all these things on your own, let him be a man. And I think also for women, particularly like working women, career women, highly educated women, we feel we're very self-sufficient, we're independent, we can do all these things. And, the chivalry thing needs to still stay in the picture, because at the end of the day, we still want to be romanced a little bit, and we still want to be taken care of. We don't admit it consciously, but we still want to be taken care of. And I think also men subconsciously
want to take care.
And we have to let that happen.
Yeah. That's the natural way of a woman and a man.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
This is what we were endowed with. We were endowed with these faculties, and I think in the modern world, we don't let that work. We don't let that actualize itself. And that, I think, it hinders a lot of very fruitful relationships from happening. And, in terms of the not knowing what you want or knowing what you want, or like the heaviness of making such a big decision. And my mother said to me, I'll tell you, when we were, getting more serious, and I expressed my fear to her. And she said to me, she said, well, what do you have to lose? She says, if it doesn't work out, you know, Jewish marriage has a divorce. And if it doesn't work out, then, you know, you go your separate ways. But she said, what will be the loss if you don't give it a try at this point? And that also shifted my head because I was 39. I was definitely scared of, you know, and then I would, you know, have to like potentially leave New York, which I did. I left my job. Like I had a lot to give up. And she said, keep your apartments.
You've got a quote about that, Ida, about not doing something versus actually doing something.
Yeah,
the risk.
actually, I have it written down. It's a JFK quote, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. He, I just like this conceptually because people often think about the risks of doing something and they don't think of the risks of not doing it.
Exactly.
So the quotes, there are risks and costs to a program of action, but they are far outweighed by the long-term risks and costs of inaction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
You just were talking about this quote before you
yeah,
came in,
no,
so.
it's a perfect situation. It's a perfect quote for what we're talking about because it's people don't take that into consideration. Like, well, if you don't do it, that you can potentially lose out on so much, you know, enrichment in your life. So do it. She just said, you have nothing to lose. Go for it.
And when she said that, did you feel this?
Yes, I felt a validation.
Yeah.
I felt a heaviness that came off, and my mother was such a wise person, and she, you know, had a lot of life experience. And
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
thank you. And so it just really lifted a lot for me, and it cleared the cloudiness in my head because I was very conflicted, you know, and I was very independent. I had everything going for me. I had, you know, my life, my friends, my everything, my career, and this was a big move. And then thinking about taking on stepchildren, and you know, there was a lot for me from where I was looking at the situation. And she just said, "You have nothing to lose. Give it a try."
Her mother said, "You owe me big."
Yeah.
Your mother alive?
Now, unfortunately, when we were in the middle of building this place to move down here, she didn't make it. Yeah.
And Neshama should have an aliyah.
I mean, yes, yeah. So, but she, as I said to you before, she had a lot of prophecy. She really put us in the right place.
So tell us about what you do now. Do you help singles
Mm-hmm.
navigate
Mm-hmm.
the dating?
So I don't do it like professionally, but you know, Rivkah and I share a lot of chat groups of other matchmakers where we're, you know, trying to help people.
Robyn's a good connector. She connected me to a lot of great people.
Right. So yeah. So
But
that's
you
what
see
I
those
do.
chat groups,
Yeah.
and it is also it can turn into a similar theme to the apps that you're
That's
saying
right.
not to go on because everyone's sharing a picture and a profile. Everyone
Right.
looks at the picture,
Yeah.
and that's where the judgment comes in.
That's right. 100%.
So it did end up becoming a world because we're on WhatsApp and online where it's about a profile.
It is. Right. But at least
you can talk to somebody.
right. At least you can talk to someone, and then somebody,
Can
the
be an
matchmaker, can be an advocate and say, you know, this person's, you know, I've known them since they were 2, and you know, amazing. So there is more context and content that comes out, I think, with that, and you have the middle people, you know, really talking about it. And now I forgot the question.
No,
What we're talking about.
what you were saying. No, she was asking you what you're doing now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So how I help people. So yeah. So I like to focus more on my contemporaries because I feel the pain with being an older single, and particularly some of people I know who've never been married. And so I like to keep my eyes out for those folks. And then younger folks, you know, to the extent that I in certain circles, I help them. But I really try to focus on older singles, and you know, it's really who comes across my radar. You know, I'm not out there in a, you know, day-to-day way, but in terms of dating. But then I work with people on their careers, which is a lot of the same advice.
Yeah, that's your main role.
Yeah, so my main thing is that I do career coaching and executive coaching. So I help people in the C-suite, CEOs, on down to like just college graduates and, to make career decisions and transitions and so on and so forth. So a lot of the same advice that you give to people dating is the same advice you give to people looking to change their careers or move, within their career to somewhere else.
Would you advise someone who is coming for career advice to do? I mean, there's probably not one answer to this, but to work with their strengths, what they're naturally good at, or to see what's out there and to find good opportunities. I find that we're often told, find what you're great at and then go after that, right? Put
Lean
all
in.
your resources into that. And
Mm-hmm.
but then we actually had a conversation with someone who said, I don't love what I do, but it affords me the lifestyle that I want, and so I do that. So I'm
and
wondering
then he
what
grew
you
to love it.
What?
Then he grew to love it.
He still doesn't love it. He just loves what it has done in his life.
Right.
So I guess you can find joy in that, but I'm just curious to know.
I typically advise people to lean into their strengths and what makes them happy. Most people are not happy at work.
Yeah.
Which is why we see a lot of movement in the job force. Most people are not happy. I was very fortunate.
Is there a statistic on that?
Yeah, there is.
There's statistics all over the board, but the vast majority of people working aren't happy.
Why do you think that is?
Because they get 9 to 5 jobs just to make a living, or like when you go to study in college, usually you're choosing something that you
are interested in,
that you
exactly.
gravitate towards.
Right. So a lot of times it's because when people go into jobs, they are sold something about the job that actually doesn't really materialize.
Right.
So the whole hiring process is very dysfunctional, what we've found, which is why do I have a coaching business? I have a coaching business because people aren't happy.
Right.
I shouldn't have to have a coaching business. So I was very fortunate that I loved waking up in the morning. I loved what I did. And I changed my career 4 times.
And each career you loved what you did?
Loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, loved it.
And so why would you have changed?
Just because things like my first career, which was I was in the sports world, when I started becoming more observant, I couldn't work on the weekends anymore. So I had to shift. Okay. So the circumstances. And then when I married Ira and I decided to move to Boston for a few years because he had full custody of his youngest son at the time. And we wanted to keep him in his familiar surroundings with his friends. So I had to leave my job because there wasn't really remote, work then. And so I had to make another shift into another thing. So circumstances really dictated that. But in terms of the happiness factor, so a lot of times what people think they're getting into vis-a-vis a job, it doesn't end up being what it is. So they're not happy. And then what happens is once they're in the job, the boss changes, the CEO changes, the market, so many, factors happen.
COVID hits.
And then circumstances change. And then I also think that a lot of people, like perhaps this gentleman you're talking about, have ulterior motives, like why they go into certain jobs because of the status it affords them, or the financial piece, or logistically or geographically they have to stay in a certain place because of other situations. So we don't always have the choice of being in our ideal situation.
There's actually...
That's the question. Is there a choice?
Well, yeah. So just like I took control and went after to find my wife, people need to do that to find their job. So they need to hunt for their job. But unfortunately, whether you're dating or you're looking for a job, you take very passive routes to the end goal. And then they're not very satisfying, because if you're applying to multiple jobs and you finally get to, and you're frustrated and finally something comes in and it's suboptimal, you take it. Well, are you going to be happy? Not really. So there's a lot of parallels between finding a job and finding a wife.
What would be a passive route, and what would be like an example of a passive route and an example of a proactive route?
So in in looking for a job, a passive route is sitting on, LinkedIn all day and just clicking apply, apply, apply. In fact, now people have robots to do it for them. So while they're sleeping, the robot is clicking apply, apply, apply. And it's very frustrating because the people who are actually really qualified for those jobs oftentimes get passed over because the machines are overwhelmed with hundreds of applications, most of which don't mean anything and they're not relevant. So that's a passive approach. A more proactive approach simply is your network, activate your network, go to conferences, go to meetings, meet people, get advice, right? It's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. It's a very big difference. So you have to get out there and talk to people and meet people. And that's now even, it's been going on for already many years. There's a very big trend in the workplace that big companies now incentivize their employees to bring in new hires, and they give them bonuses. If you bring somebody in, we're hire, you'll get $1,000 or $500 or whatever. It's very common now in big companies. So because they want the referrals. The employees want the incentives, yeah. But the employers want the referrals because it's just another layer or another level of validation that, okay, yeah, we should really talk to this person because it's so overwhelming, with all the other applicants. And, it's you rather at least talk to somebody, right? We do this in our lives all the time. If you're looking to get your cabinets done, you're going to speak to somebody who went through the process. Can you refer a vendor to me, right? So we feel like we always have a better, insight into something if we have somebody who already went through it.
We were having a conversation about empowerment before for the interview, and you were saying that a lot of workers, part of the problem is they could be in the right place, but they don't feel empowered.
That's right.
So do you want to share why they don't feel empowered and how you would empower a team?
Mm-hmm. So people don't feel empowered because they don't get recognized for their work. On one hand, and on the other hand, they don't realize how meaningful and impactful their work is. They're just, they're doing their job. And sometimes if you're in a lower or middle role and you're clicking on a computer all day, you don't really see the long-term or down the food chain impact of what you do. So I feel like I end up doing this as a coach because once I'm starting to go through somebody's career and their experiences, and I'm just like, well, just tell me your home runs. How did you move the needle on something, or how did you, make a big splash and whatever. And once they start talking, and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. How come that's not on your resume? Well, whatever. And so we have to strengthen people and to feel that what they do actually is meaningful. And I think that's how you empower people to feel like, wow, I really loved when I did this project, even though nobody recognized me for it, but Robyn is recognizing them. And I said, okay, if you love doing that project, then let's find you something where you can do more of that.
Right.
And so it's getting in touch with what makes them tick, with what makes them happy and feeling productive and accomplished. And also what's going on now in the economy, at least in the United States, is that a lot of companies are letting go of middle management. And so more managers have to manage more people. So there's a lot of layers that are getting eliminated.
I was ask you, what happens if you have a huge...
And that also makes it very difficult. So if a manager now had 10 people under them and now they have 42 people under them, how are they supposed to empower everybody and do their own job at the same time? It's very, very difficult. And most of the times in big companies, these teams are very globally displaced. So your people aren't even down the hall anymore.
Right.
So
what would you advise? Maybe each group can have subgroups with...
Yes, they can have little pods, let's call it. And also in terms of, if you're running a team, there's a lot of different strategies that you can use, but, communication is the number one thing. And you have to and there's a lot of tools now that you can use. You got to make sure that you're communicating with your team regularly and with your direct reports regularly and not just once a month. So you have to make an effort to do that.
Do you have something to add about empowerment?
Well, I'm just thinking how that affects the dating world, because if you're not happy at work, it really is going to impact your relationships outside of work. And very often, if feeling insecure about your parnassa, your income, it's hard. It's really hard out there.
Yes, it's funny. I'm glad you mentioned that, because a lot of the guys that I talk to, you might have this experience as well. A lot of times it's like, well, I just want to get settled in my career.
Right.
Before they
would go out, or before they would get more serious. Like, they go out to go out, but they feel like, well, I just need to get to a certain point. And I say back to them, well, what happens if that point never comes, or it comes in a really long time, or it comes from a place you don't expect it? And then, I don't know. Well, one of the people that I sought advice from, she said to me, well, money comes and money goes. And when God wants to give you, right, he decides on Rosh Hashanah what's going to be. So, you can't look at and that's also like for women who think on their list that the guy has to be making, X amount of money. We see a lot of that in our community. And I say to them, same thing. Money comes and money goes. It might look very rosy right now, but guess what? In a couple of years, it could be a downturn. We don't know. So you can't rest your entire decision on that.
Yeah.
And so too with your career. If you're with the right person, they're going to support, your growth in that career. I mean, how many women do we know, and men, who are in medical school and they're married already, and their partners, their spouses.
And that's how their muzzle for their parnassa is going to come.
Right.
By being together.
And going through it and helping each other. Right. And there's many, people who are sitting and learning, and their spouses are supporting them for a while, or maybe for their lives, so.
When would you advise someone to start dating for marriage?
Well, I think it depends what community you're in. Ira probably has his own answer. I would say, I think mid-20s is a starting point. I mean, in certain communities, it's 18, 19, and, I'm not in that community. But I think in our community, because unfortunately, or just the way it is, society-wise, 26 is the new 18. When I was 18 and I went off to college, I was pretty independent. I could pay my own bills. I knew how to make decisions, and I was very focused on a career and, all that. But I think the young kids today are not at 18 fully equipped to go prime time in life, I think. And I think they do need a few years. Now, of course, everyone is different, and there are some that are extremely mature and ready to go. But I just think that they do need a little bit of time, after school, to get a little situated before looking for, seriously looking for a partner. That's my own advice.
Well, you should know there's also people who say mid-20s is young.
Yeah. But you can start mid-20s. Yeah. It doesn't mean that, like I said, 26 is the new 18. So, and that is a statistic.
Right. Also, 18-year-olds today are more self-aware in many ways than we were at 18. Because there's so much more out there in the world for self-discovery. Mm-hmm. So in some ways, they have more of a maturity than we did at 18. That's what I think.
Could be.
Well,
yeah, could be.
But what are your thoughts on when to start?
Well, when I look around, when we lived in New York and we saw what was happening on the Upper West Side with Jewish singles, it seemed like the longer you wait, the smaller the pool is, and the more isolated people started to get. So the choosier you want to be, it can work against you. So that's my big concern about people waiting and not being focused.
Yeah, I think that's the crux of the issue with the older singles is there's a smaller pool and get more choosy and picky.
And it's hardest for women because the demographics work against them. I figured out when I was dating that for every man, there was like 20 women to date.
But the thing is that
it was
Hashem
crazy.
created the world that every single person has a soulmate. It does seem that way, that there's more women than men, but every man has a soulmate, a woman, and every woman has a man. So they're out there. They're just more, the women are more available or accessible, like they're more open, and it's more of a hunt to find the men. That's the way it seems to me.
Yeah, also less men will seek out help.
Right, exactly.
They
That's
think
what I
they can just find it on their own.
Right. I think
You
you're
know?
one of the unique men
Yes.
who went out seeking. Most men, the women are seeking, and the men are like, oh, I'll wait to
passive.
see what comes.
That's right. They're passive.
Yeah.
And also, if you're a guy and you're getting, invitations every night of the week to, for Shabbat or holidays or whatever, and then you're getting phone calls all the time. Oh, I have this girl for you. I have this girl for you. So you create an idea in your mind that, oh,
I can get anybody.
I can get anyone. There's a lot of fish in this sea. And so it starts to
Get to your head.
get to your head, and then it's like, oh, I can wait, or
We'll see. I'll wait
maybe
for
this one, there'll be somebody else, there'll be somebody better, and then they get to be a little bit older, and it gets to be a little
I
bit
call
more.
it practice makes permanent.
Yeah.
That's what happens. Keep recycling the same pattern, and in the end, you're 55 and you're sitting at the table by yourself with no one to sit with you, no one to commiserate with. It's very sad. My heart goes out to people who have that.
And there are quite a few.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard.
Yeah.
So if you're young and listening, start now.
Exactly.
Right.
And
Exactly.
if you're older, don't give up. Because
Yes.
Right.
If you're older, don't give up, because
Hashem has a plan. Like, even if, maybe you could have done something differently, you are where you're meant to be right now, and something can be done now. It's never too late.
yeah, exactly. And I learned this from Rabbi Goldberg. We have to embrace our place. So we have to understand, okay, God put me in this place, in this situation for a reason. What am I going to do with it? And, inertia is the worst thing. And people get very upset and they get frustrated. Oh, I'm 50 and I haven't found my soulmate yet. Forget it. Like, I'm not even going to bother anymore. And I do meet people who say, like, I'm just giving dating a break. Well, why? It's just too frustrating. So, okay, well, let's try another approach. Maybe we need to network a little bit differently, or maybe your profile, we can tweak your profile a bit. So, like you said before, you want to just keep moving. The lack of action is not a good thing, because we're meant to keep moving.
Right. So, but then you'll have people who will say, listen, I decided to be open. I give things a try, but then it's really hard and I get burnt out.
Yes.
And so then they become closed off to being open.
Yes.
Because they feel like they've been too open.
Yes. Yes. It's very frustrating, and it's debilitating.
It sounded like you gave so many different ideas a try. You said, I went out, whoever the matchmaker suggested, I went out with.
Yes, I didn't want to see the pictures. You
didn't want to see the pictures. You just trusted them and went out.
Yeah. So,
but you saw Robyn's picture because you knew what she looked like.
Because we did the research.
Oh,
After
okay.
We did the research. No, we did the research.
So did you like the idea of not seeing the picture and just going out?
Probably not if I wasn't on a mission, because I had so many options. But the strategy was to empower the matchmakers. Like, this is what I'm looking for. You see who I am. And I try to meet them, many of them as possible. And who do you think would be right for me? And sometimes they're on, sometimes they're off. But Leah was really on.
And we were for
Leah.
her first match.
And it was her first
Our
match?
matchmaker, we were her first
Oh,
match.
that's-
Yeah.
Do you know there's this idea of too many cooks in the kitchen? Like, sometimes it undermining the like a positive result, like going to several matchmakers. you said you have no regrets and you would do it all over again. But I'm just curious to know your thoughts on going to maybe too many matchmakers, where maybe some of them have like connections with each other, and then they feel like, well, this person's already on it, so I'm not gonna take an active role because he's going to that person.
Oh, there was a lot of chatter between a lot of these people, and I remember going to New York and meeting with round robin of matchmakers, and all of us lined up, and we got our chance to present or whatever. Look, I have no regrets. I think, I know what my outcome was, and I'm delighted. But I think that matchmakers are human. They can only do so much, and they only have so much time. There was one matchmaker who said, "Look, for X amount of dollars, I'll find you the right person." And I said, "You don't know who you're talking to. I know virtually every unmarried woman in the United States in a certain age group. If they exist and I don't know them, I'm not doing my job." I deployed the highest level of recruiting skills to this. So I would be very cautious giving money to anybody who said they could find someone for you. They have a very limited scope of who's out there. And I say, go to as many matchmakers as you can, take control of the destiny, make the best possible presentation you can about who you are and what you want. Clarity is king, and being persistent and staying in touch with them, because so many people come by. Look what I did with the gifts. No one would forget me because I didn't want any guy competing against me. I wanted to be there. I wanted to be on the top of their radar at all times, and I contacted them incessantly.
I also really feel like, well, first of all, there's a lot of time and effort that goes into networking and looking for people, because yes, often you see the same names being recycled, and you really got to dig deep to find new people and to find someone that is in line with what the person's looking for. But there is never any guarantees about who that's going to be, because that's in Hashem's hands. You can work very hard, and that's you're not going to be the one who's going to bring this person's soulmate, and that's why it is good to be open and speak to as many people as possible, and it could be a friend that ends up setting you up.
You never know.
You could meet at an event.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important to be open and speak to many people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And also I must say about the charging thing, you said there was one matchmaker that charged. I actually do now charge to set up, because I have a team that works with me, and I want to pay my team, and that's fine. I guess it's a new way of doing things, because I used to not charge. But it's also a lot of time and effort that goes into looking for somebody.
I would say,
well, what you're doing is more of a service fee because you have a platform. Right. He's talking about like an individual person who, sitting in somewhere in some city, who, charges just to do it. Right. It's different. What you're doing is a huge platform. You're servicing a whole lot of people. It's another model.
But you're also positioning someone. You're adding value. You're just not saying, I'm just going to send you a few dates.
Yeah.
The added value that you bring, knowing who you are, I would definitely want to engage with you.
Oh, that's sweet.
No, because you're not your average shotgun who's working at their kitchen table, having, their thoughts are in the right place and their heart's in the right place, right? But this is not what they do. And they're just doing it for chesed reasons. And they have a limited network and limited ability to do what they want. It just so happens that Leah, our shotgun, very smart, very astute. And
did she have a network when she set you up, or it was just a thought?
It was
That's
just
what I'm
a
saying.
thought.
You just don't know.
You don't know. But there's a lot of wisdom that goes behind making a good match, right? So she just had it.
there is a lot of wisdom, and sometimes you think you're being wise and it wasn't the right idea for a person, and sometimes it is. Like you said, sometimes the matchmaker would make a suggestion and it wasn't right, and sometimes it was a good idea. So, sometimes you think you're being wise, but it's not necessarily right. Do you know what I mean?
Right, but I would challenge that. I would say that almost all of them were in the ballpark, and that's good enough to start with.
And I think
like
that's
me,
really good on the
right?
receiving end
Yes.
to know, okay, it's within the ballpark, but it's not exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I was in the ballpark, but I wasn't a home run right out of the gate, right?
Yeah.
So it took a little time.
Okay, then we get into marriage. So how do you continue? Like, you're both looking at each other and sharing about each other as if you just started dating. How do you keep that spark alive?
So I think that for people ask me, are you happy? And we just, for me, I think that a lot of what we base our relationship on is gratitude. So it's always appreciating the person verbally, not just in my head, but oh, thank you for doing the dishes, thank you for doing that, thank you. And for me, just having all these years of expressing gratitude verbally, that it sinks in somewhere, and that keeps our closeness. We share, of course, a lot of values, but there's a lot of things we don't share. And so that's what, for me, keeps it going, because we're both givers, and we give to each other in many ways, but we also give to other people. And I think we both respect each other for that, because that's who we are anyway. So for me, it's the gratitude, which I think keeps things in perspective. And recognizing that, wow, this person is there for you, they have your back. Yeah, they might annoy you here and there, but we actually very rarely fight, which is sort of interesting. Very rarely fight, and if we do, it's it ends very quickly.
And what would you say?
I would say two things. For anyone who's getting remarried, for anyone's getting remarried, your wife has to be number one, because I saw so many problems with kids that come along and destroy marriages, and so that's the first thing that created a moat around my marriage. But in general,
You mean
otherwise,
children that come along and destroy?
Meaning in a second marriage,
Yeah.
that
The actual children can come along and destroy
yes,
marriage?
there's many
Yeah.
situations where the
Yeah.
children are not happy that one of their parents got remarried,
Uh-huh.
I heard
or sometimes they're in the house, with them, and
Right.
there's
So you're saying
So-
the wife has to be number one more than the child.
the wife has to be number one, and the kids are a second number one. But you've got to create a moat around your relationship, and that's got to be your number one priority. And for us, it's all about giving, like what Robyn said. For me, it's all about her. And what do you want to do? What do you want to do? It's really all about my wife.
So nice.
I think we also learn in Torah that your spouse is supposed to be your number one. And I think people do think that, and they think, oh, it's the children. And I'm not saying the children aren't important. They are important. But Torah tells us that your spouse is your number one priority, period.
And what about your careers? Because you both are still, you're not retired.
No.
Yeah. So you have your careers,
Mm-hmm.
and how do you, like many people, because they have these successful careers, their spouses become number two instead of number one. How do you keep your relationship number one?
Well, first of all, I think because we got married later in life, that we also had our own lives, so, if he's working till 11, 12 o'clock at night, it's not like I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, he's ignoring me or abandoning me. No, I have
You're busy yourself.
I have plenty of things to do. I can go to a class, I can go out with friends, I can go to the gym. Like, there's so many things to do. I get on the phone, and so we brought our own lives to the relationship, and that didn't stop.
Right, that's the
So
advantage of getting married later.
yes,
Yeah.
yes and no, because if you bring toxic things from your past, that's not good,
Right.
right? And baggage. But we just had, we have, and we still have very disparate interests in terms of what we do with our time. And
So he'll do his thing and you'll do yours.
yes, and we respect that. We were like, it was never like, wait a minute, you're mine now. Or, we moved to Boston and all of a sudden I had to drop my job and, my friends, and I left my mother in New York, like all that. So yes, I focused on the family. I focused on his son, who was living with us at the time. But I also didn't forget all the other things that that I love to do.
And did he make you feel, because sometimes people move places and they feel like they have sacrificed something for their spouse. Did you feel that way?
No, because I'll tell you how it went down. When we got engaged, I said to him, what do we need? What do we do? He had just gotten custody of his youngest son that year. So it wasn't like an ongoing thing. And the other kids were in college or out of the house. And so I said, what do you want to do? Where do you want to live? And he said, where do you want to live? And I said, well, what's best for your son? And he said, I think it's best for my son to stay in Boston where his friends are and the school that he's used to. And I said, fine, we'll go to Boston. And then he said to me, well, after he finishes high school in 3 years, wherever you want to go, we'll go. And that's how it went down. So I made that choice.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like he pressured me into going. I asked him. And
that's the giving part of both of you.
And we made the decision. Well, I made the decision, what's see, and there we were putting his son first.
Right.
Right. But
you felt that was.
I felt it was the right thing to do. And I hardly knew this kid.
Yeah.
And I felt that was the right
But he also
thing.
left it open to you to make that decision, which is nice. You talk about respect a lot. I just heard you mention that word quite a bit. Do you think that is what people should look out for when they're dating, if they respect the person?
100%.
Do you think that's number one?
I think, yes.
I think so too.
I think so. And unfortunately, I have some friends right now who, going through a challenge in their marriage, and it all boils down to respect. And we've seen it, over the years. And it's destructive. If you don't respect your partner, it's the same thing. Like if you don't respect your boss, you're not going to want to perform for your boss. You'll do, a job halfway, or your eyes will always be looking somewhere else. And so too, in a marriage, if you don't respect your partner, then you can't make good decisions together. And, you want to celebrate them. Why not? Right. And that's another thing that I think a lot of people do is they trash their partners. And, not only is it inappropriate in a public space, but it just brings a level of negativity. Who needs it? So I think respect, maybe you have a different opinion, but I think respect is number one.
You can see why they'll love.
We can. But, respect can be it can sometimes be tricky. I'm saying if someone really gets to know somebody, you need to remember the things that you respect in a person, because there are a human's a human being. Do you know what I mean? And there are things that you might not respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's exactly. There may be some things like that, but that also goes to, a lot of other types of relationships where we see a lot of, hatred and jealousy and judgment about other people. And again, the Torah tells us, that we have to judge the whole of the person.
That's right.
Right? So even though we might not like a particular thing that they've done just now, they insulted me, they hurt me, or, or somebody else, whatever that I care about, you can't let that one thing destroy your entire attitude towards that person. We have to love every person. So you have to judge the whole of the person. I think that's what I was
exactly
trying to
what
you're
out.
saying. Yeah.
Yeah, because I can imagine some people listening and thinking, I respect the person, but then there's things I don't respect. But I think that's part of the dating experience also, is just really zoning on the things that your values that you respect. And if you see that in that person, there's going to be other things that
of course
are not perfect.
Nothing's perfect. And not all those things reveal themselves before you get to the chuppah, right? But again, if you can have just the basics, and you have to be very clear, what is really important in this relationship? What are the things that I need to be focused on that are enduring, that are the most meaningful, and that are going to keep us on the same path together? Not the material, physical, outward things. It's the inner things and the value system. So, yeah, there's going to be certain things like, oh, I don't like that he wears, short sleeve shirts to shul. Okay, come on, get over it. Eventually you'll be able to change that. You know what I'm saying? And then, you focus on the most important things. But also, as I just mentioned about changing people, I think also people go into relationships thinking, oh, I'm going to change that. Very rarely can we change. So we have to be accepting. Like, this is, this is the package.
So cool that you have this spark going now. How many years are you married?
21 glorious years.
21 glorious years. And on the first date, you did not have that spark. Now,
That's right.
The big problem in today's world is after the first date, you get, I didn't feel the spark, so I'm calling it off. Right. You did not, and you've got this spark going for 21 years.
Right, right. Well, we called it off, but, God had a plan.
No, but what I'm saying is,
he put us back together, and then Leah, our shadchan, she had some sort of intuition, and she pushed it. So persistence beats resistance. We talked about that, and we also had to be open to it.
Right.
You had to walk through that door.
I think that's a great thing for people to hear, that you don't necessarily have to feel that spark that you want to feel on that first date.
No, not at all. Hopefully you'll feel a spark about something, but it doesn't always have to be physical. It could be spiritual. It could be emotional. It could be intellectual.
You said it was terrible the first date.
Yeah, there was nothing going on there. I mean, there was, yes, I mean, I still remember it. There was nothing going on. It was just a nice conversation. And that's the other thing I tell people, like my mother said to me, I'll say to someone like, what do you have to lose? Just go out for a cup of coffee. You don't have to have a whole big dinner and this and that, on a date.
Yeah, but someone just said to me, I've done this a million times. Just go out for a cup of coffee. I'm done with that.
Yeah.
I have to.
But you don't know if this next person's going to be.
I know.
Right. So what do you say to that?
Right.
You know what? He's looking at a picture. He's like, I don't want to do this again. You know what? I'm asking you, what would you say to that person?
Who's just looking at a picture?
No, who said, I've done this.
Tell them their story.
Yes.
Tell them their story.
I've gone out a million times already, and I'm burnt out from going out on a cup of coffee. I want to be able to look at this profile and feel this is someone I want to go out with.
I would say you can't judge a person by words on a piece of paper that are also meant to maybe enrich certain things, or they
no, they're like I'm attracted to what they like, what's written about them. They're not attracted to the picture.
Okay. So again, I think if you're focused only on physical, like out of the gate, you're not ready. You're not ready. Because this is not why, yes, definitely a physical attraction is important, but out of the gate, if you can't get past that, and by the way, most of the time, as Ira said, the picture is not reflective of who the person is, right? And unfortunately, we're in a very visual society, and because these pictures are readily available, we as matchmakers have fueled all of that a little bit. But that's what I would say. It's tough love. I call it,
Yeah, you got to be straightforward.
You have to be straightforward. If you're only focused on the looks right now, and you're not even willing to even talk to the person on the phone, you're not ready.
If you can think of a personal challenge that you've been through and how you've overcome it, so that people who are going through a challenge right now, well, I'd say the dating experience is one of them, but if there's something they want to share within that and how you've overcome it for people who are having a hard time right now.
Well, bringing a child into the marriage was quite challenging. Robyn only met my son a few times. We had a wedding. The day after the wedding, he went to camp for a month, right? And then we had a driver bring him back to Boston to a brand new home, brand new mother. It was very, very challenging. And this is what makes Robyn quite unique. I mean, she just put herself, I mean, you talk about being vulnerable. She was never a parent. Now she's a full-time parent. He had some emotional issues because of the divorce, and it was just confusing. And Robyn and I had to navigate that, and it was choppy waters. But somehow, I don't know how we got through it. I really don't know how we got through it. It was very tough. But all I know is that every day that I'm married, I'm just get crazy and crazier about her because I just see so much good in her.
Well, in that same year, and that was the first year we were married, a challenge, this came up very, very early, like within the first couple of weeks. I get a letter in the mail from an attorney, all this legal stuff against me. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do with this? And I thought, oh, why did I do this? Why did I come here? Why am I in this relationship? All these things. And we talked about it, and I just did what I thought was the right thing to do and shut it down. And it was a whole lot of nothing. But of course, in the beginning, when I first, got into it, I was like, how can this happen to me? All of this. And I made a decision. We talked about it, and that was it. And then it ended up totally fizzling. So I think the lesson from that is that oftentimes when you have a challenging situation, you take a deep breath, maybe take a break from it, not to knee-jerk react to something. Maybe have to walk away, create some space, and then get your senses together. And then most of these issues end up fizzling out, and they're not as big as you thought they were in the beginning. So for us, it's really about communication. And I think in every relationship, communication is important. And it's about feeling like, okay, let's sit down rationally and talk this through, and then we're going to solve it.
Yeah, I like zooming out because when you zoom out, you have much greater perspective.
100%. You've got to give things space, and sometimes you need help. Sometimes you need a mediator, so to speak, or a third party to help you get there. But yes, stepping back and then not knee jerking and just waiting for the dust to settle. It ends up being most of the time a whole lot of nothing.
Right.
Good advice.
And not nearly as bad as you thought it was when you were consumed by it.
No, and I just heard, I just told you this morning, and this is like my new thing. I just heard Rav Daniel Katz interviewed, and he said that the right way to look at something happening to you, that it's happening for you. And I never heard that before, and that really resonated with me in a very deep way. And I think having an attitude like that is very helpful, because you're not a victim. These things aren't, Hashem, God is helping you to get somewhere he knows you can get to. So he's doing this for you. And that could slow down a reaction. Because once you say something to react to something in a negative way, you can't take that back. And then that's what starts to snowball into really bad situations. So I think taking a deep breath and thinking, okay, Hashem, you're sending me a message. What is this all about? Maybe I need to shift in something. That diffuses a lot.
Well, we always end our podcast with a favorite quote.
Okay.
So who are we starting with?
Well, I just gave you mine.
I know you did.
I wouldn't say that that's mine necessarily, because I don't feel like things happen. Like, I don't feel a victim. I'm not like that. But I would say that, Your attitude determines your altitude.
Yeah, I love that one.
Beautiful. And what would you say?
Yeah. This whole conversation is about persistence beats resistance. And I think that for anyone listening, take control of your destiny. Own it. And find what you want and do everything you can to find it. So, there's no substitute for action.
You can say it. You've done it. Such a pleasure having you both here today.
Thank you. This is amazing.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Wisdom.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
She had the opportunity.
So much beautiful, wise insights, and you're living examples of the spark staying with you.
Staying alive.
Staying alive.
Yeah, thank God.
And of
Thank
taking
God.
an active role in getting the life that you want.
Absolutely.
Yes, of course.
Absolutely. 100%.
Thank
Well,
you
thank
for-
you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
All right.
you.